Democratic congressman from Illinois, Mike Quigley. He sits on the Intelligence Committee and is planning to be there during Bannon's testimony. Congressman, thanks very much for your time tonight. I'd like to know first, what is your top question for Steve Bannon? How does he fit into your investigation?
Well, not confirming who's appearing before us, but obviously Mr. Bannon's of great interest given his role in the campaign and during the administration. I think the main interest is something the HIPSI investigation hasn't really touched on, money laundering. I thought it was just fascinating that he pulled that out of the book, that he said this investigation is going to end up being all about money laundering. And I think he mentioned Mr. Kushner in there and Deutsche Bank. Fascinating combination, given that Deutsche Bank was fined $630 million for their involvement in a $10 billion Russian money laundering scheme. And obviously Mr. Manafort has already been indicted for money laundering. So there's a lot to learn, and I hope Mr. Bannon will share some of that with us beyond what we learned in the book.
Did that book, I mean, one of the comments that obviously got under the president's skin, it seems, was talking about Donald Trump Jr., and that's Fire and Fury, of course, inside the Trump White House by Michael Wolff, talking about Donald Trump Jr. and that meeting with Russians at Trump Tower being potentially treasonous and unpatriotic. Would you say that your interest in Steve Bannon, based on that assessment, is heightened, maybe?
Well, I'd like to know what he knows and what if he knows anything about what the president learned about that meeting before it happened or after it happened. I thought it was interesting that he mentioned that it was zero, I think he said something like zero chance that he didn't take those people he met with right up to meet his father. I don't know if that's true, but I find it very hard to believe that at least the president's son didn't share that that meeting was going to take place, what the purpose of that meeting was, and what happened after the fact. It's very hard to imagine that, given the significance of that meeting and what they were trying to accomplish, get dirt on Hillary Clinton, he didn't share that with his father.
Congressman Jeremy Bash has a question for you. Jeremy.
Hey, Congressman. If Steve Bannon does appear before the committee, and I understand you're not confirming who's going to be before the committee in closed session, but if you have an opportunity to question him, will you ask him about what the president did in terms of the decision to fire Jim Comey, the obstruction question that Bob Mueller is also investigating?
Yeah, given the role that Mr. Bannon played in the campaign and, again, in the administration, it's pretty easy to imagine that he had a ringside seat to what took place. So that's just one of the many questions we'd like to know. You know, why did he fire Mr. Comey? What about General Flynn? Obvious questions about General Flynn. We now know that he's pled guilty to lying about meeting with the Russian ambassador about those sanctions President Obama put on the Russians for what they did during our election. So there's a multitude of questions. Obviously, all those are fair game.
Congressman Jake Sherman from Politico has a question.
Congressman, this investigation now has dragged on many, many months. I'm wondering if you can give us an update on when you think it will wrap up, and what is the mood right now between Republicans and Democrats on the panel? It's obviously been contentious at points. Could you give us an update on that?
Yeah, probably not going bowling anytime soon. In fairness, Mr. Conaway, I think, has tried to do the best he can, despite the fact that the White House and the chairman of the full committee have made it extraordinarily difficult. I think we've probably interviewed about half as many witnesses as the Senate investigation. We obviously have a lot more that we have to do. I challenge the word dragged. I'd like this to go a lot quicker. But the fact is, many of the subpoenas would like to have sent out, or witnesses would like to bring back. That's not happening. Some witnesses, like Mr. Kushner, were rushed in when we didn't have all their documentations. So if we move back to the beginning of this investigation, if the President of the United States had said, we're going to cooperate fully, he could have said what he said all along, that this is a witch hunt. But we're going to cooperate fully, meaning his campaign officials and everybody who worked for him at the White House. This investigation would have gone a lot smoother, and we would be a lot farther along. And then the president could know whether or not we found anything that hurts his administration.
Congressman Mike Quigley of Illinois, thank you so much for your time tonight, sir. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.